Hello, Yu-Gi-Oh players, and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0. Ignore the random phone ringing in the background. Anyway, that just made me totally forget what I was about to say. Anyway, I say that a lot. I was about to say anyway again. Okay, let's actually make the beginning of this video work. So, I've been getting a lot of subscriber feedback from my subscriber feedback video. Imagine that. And by the way, keep contributing your ideas to that comment section under that video, because let's be honest, if I am wanting to make sure that I am meeting all of your expectations, it's a little bit helpful to know what your expectations of my channel are. So, yeah, hit up that comment section. Anyway, the point being, I've been getting a lot of subscriber feedback, and the vast majority of that feedback has been requesting some competitive strategy videos, which I am absolutely going to deliver on. Consider it delivered. However, disclaimer, describing my competitive strategy and actually planning out competitive strategy is a pretty new thing to me. I tend to be the kind of guy who goes into a game with no plan. I mean, yeah, I understand the basic strategy of the decks that I'm using, and I've had a lot of experience with them. But I don't go in thinking, okay, this guy's probably going to have this many MSTs in his deck. He's got this likelihood of drawing this card that I'm going to open up. Whatever. I don't go into a game thinking that. I tend to make up my strategy totally on the fly, which is why I enjoy decks such as, I don't know, this. Or maybe, of course, my absolute favorite, this. I mean, my real favorite is Junk Double, but I can never get the cards for that. But because the Vancouver-Portland meta sucks for card circulation, I usually end up with decks like this. Which, believe me, this is a great deck and all, but I don't like the strategy, and this deck feels similarly about not liking me, because I really only run like 2 of every card that doesn't do searching or summoning from the deck or whatever, and I seem to always draw the 2 cards that I can't use, or 2 copies of 1 card that I can't use. So, anyway, enough of my complaining. By the way, I think I might start an eBay store just so that I can get rid of that deck. Anyway, I'm saying anyway a lot. So, yes, I do really enjoy making up stuff on the fly, but that doesn't mean I'm not thinking about strategy in-game. So this is going to take quite a bit of thought for me, and possibly me playing a lot more Yu-Gi-Oh! In real life against competitive players, because playing is kind of how I make up my strategy. But today, the reason why you are actually watching this video is not for me to be rambling on about the total bull that comes out of my brain when I'm making up, like, seriously, my favorite strategies, and a lot of the best decisions I've made in this game, both in deck making and in the game, have started with the sentence, or the statement rather, I have a really bad idea. Like, that added Grand Mole into my side deck at Nationals, that prompted me to be running all sorts of dumb things in my side deck. Anyway, wow, I am really ADD-like today. So, today, there was a point to this video, yes. The point to this video is there is one thing that I think about before I go into any game, and that is preventing misplays. Because I am an absent-minded mofo, and I tend to forget about random things and then just totally blunder into a terrible play. Case in point, trying to Diamond Dire Dracosack with a full field of tokens. You guys probably remember that story from Nationals. I did still win that game, but yeah, dumb moves aside, yes, I am absent-minded, which means that I need to go into every game thinking about every possible thing that I could do wrong. This is how people get burned for not siding out, or how they get burned for forgetting that they have an effect veiler in their hand. So I do actually have a strategy for preventing myself from making misplays. And it follows one pretty basic rule, which is keep track of your resources. No matter what you're playing, or what part of the game it's in, always know what you have available to you, because not thinking about the possibilities that you have for making plays is what gets people into trouble. So I have a couple of ways of doing that. The first is I actually have this process that I go through in my brain when I'm in a really tight situation. I need to make a play, which is, I believe there were 5 steps to this at one point, but I'm just going to kind of go through. First, you identify what you need to do with a play. So say your opponent's got a Dragasack on the board, and you need to get rid of it, or steal it, I suppose, in a lot of these decks these days. And then you're like, okay, so I know what I need to do. What do I have in my deck that can do it? So you think of every possible way that you could go about, that you not even thinking about what you have in your hand or in your deck, or in your graveyard rather, or whatever. Just think about, in your deck in general, what can you do to make that play? Then you use, the resources in your hand and knowing what's in your graveyard and what you have available to you. You decide what is the most efficient and the most, I suppose, the smartest way to do that. And that part really comes out of experience from your deck, because I can't just tell you what an efficient use of your cards looks like in any situation. But you, as a judge of your own deck, can decide, what can I do that is the smartest play for this deck that still accomplishes what I need to do with this move? Then, a really important step that it actually has to do with reading your opponent's hand and your opponent's field, which I'll get into in another video, is what could my opponent have, or what is it likely for my opponent to have to stop the play that I'm about to try and make? Does he have a warning, or have you seen the warning come up in the game? Is there a possibility that he's got a bottomless? Is your strategy going to lose to hand traps? So once you've done that read, and once you have kind of gone through that in your brain, and determine which strategy is least likely to fall to those things, then you decide what you can do to get around those problems. And this is especially true if your deck really dies to hand traps. What are you going to do to get around the problem with that hand trap? Let's say that you have a backup play ready. Perhaps you have a compulsory in your hand that if you can't get rid of that Dragasack this turn, perhaps you can get rid of it during your opponent's turn. There are any number of ways of going around this, but the next step definitely is look at what you can do to get around that play. And then finally, before you actually make the play, determine, what do you do if the play goes wrong? What's next? So aside from just what do you do if the play goes wrong, how are you going to follow up on the play? How are you going to recover from that play? I think I've talked about this numerous times, but I always like to reiterate it, and I definitely do have other things that I can talk about having to do with preventing misplays. But once you do that, once you know what you're going to do afterward, once you know what your opponent could do to stop it, and how you would get around that, and you know what you're trying to do, and you know all the ways that you could possibly do it, then you can make a play, and then you are much less likely to make a misplay. And I know that this sounds like a lot of thinking to do when you're making a play, and it sounds like it's going to make you do slow play, but really, if you have enough practice going through this process in your head, just going down the list, it doesn't take much time at all, and you end up generally making the better plays available to you. The other way that I really prevent misplays, and a lot of, I'm not entirely sure that this is completely legal at premier events, but at Seattle regionals and nationals, I have yet to be stopped from doing this, but they were definitely correcting people on how they hold their hands at Worlds. Generally what I do, I'll just grab a sample hand, which is, true to my luck, a pretty terrible hand for spellbooks. But the point being, I've got a hand, and so what I do is, no joke, I look at my hand during my turn. I only have my hand in my hand during my turn. When it's not my turn, I set my hand on the table. Why? Because that makes me think more about what I've got in my hand. If you're just looking at your hand and you're like, yeah, I got this, okay, during your opponent's turn, it's more likely that you're going to miss something like a Timely Veiler or Maxi, or you're going to make less smart decisions. Your decisions are going to be less smart. I'm not getting my grammar wrong there. You're less likely to make smart decisions if you're just looking at your hand and you're like, okay, I know it's in my hand. Yada, yada. If you place your hand face down and every time your opponent makes a move, say wait for a second, look at your hand, decide if, like, do you have something to stop that with? Do you have a response to that play? And if you do have something that you could possibly stop it with based on the resources you have in your hand, is that the smartest idea? This is really important because if you have your hand, if you miss plays like that, then your opponent can get rolling and you'll end up in the next turn like, wow, I could have stopped that, I could have made a much better play. So in my opinion, it's kind of a psychological trick that you do to yourself to set your hand on the table face down, like not face up so your opponent can see it, of course, but like face down, so that you're forced to like, oh wait, just a second, I have to make sure I know what's in my hand before you go on. The same is true of your graveyard. A lot of the times, especially if you're playing a deck like Dragon Plants, you can forget what you have available to you in your graveyard. You can forget about your resources, and that's definitely something that's extremely preventable because one of the easiest things in the game that you can do that isn't against the rules, and since it's public knowledge anyway, you can do it, is to lay out your graveyard on the table in front of you. As long as both players understand that that is your graveyard, that you are not playing from it necessarily, and then it's usually absolutely all right. Once again, I have yet to be called out on it. And if you do that, if you have that in front of you, you have a constant reminder of what your resources are in your graveyard for decks like Dragon Plants, Spellbooks, etc. So those are just a couple of the ways that I tend to prevent misplays. Other than that, like, really the only thing that can prevent you from making a dumbass play is practice, practice, practice. You really need to get experience with a deck in order to make sure that you don't just royally fuck up. So yeah, that's my first video on competitive strategy. I will have more as soon as I kind of work out my own competitive strategy and you know, find a way to tell you guys about it. I will have, yes, ADD moment happening still. So I will have more strategy videos coming up. Meanwhile, today I also did promise a Thunder Family introduction for my Rethinking Thunder series. I am the single most incompetent speaker that is talking on YouTube today. Anyway, yes, those are things that I will have up in the near future. Meanwhile, thank you guys for watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual. If you guys liked the video, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, let me know why in the comment section below. And then subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh! Shenanigans. I'm your host, the RJB0. Thank you for watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual, and I got a jet. See you guys.